Hello, I'm Tony Mangino from TC2, and this is Staying Connected, where we talk about what really matters to enterprise buyers navigating today's technology and sourcing decisions. This is part two of our series on Starlink in the large enterprise space. In part one, we covered where Starlink fits strategically. Today, we're getting into the hard part, how you deploy and operate it across your estate while minimizing technical, operational, and commercial risk. If part one was, should we consider it? This part two is, can we do it well at scale? And for enterprises, the answer is usually yes, but only with discipline. I'm joined for this discussion today by my TC2 colleagues, Brent Knight and Frank Zagrodnik. Brent, let's kick this off. Talk to me about the issues associated with trying to deploy Starlink at scale.
Well, Tony, at one site, Starlink can feel easy. At several hundred sites, it becomes a field services and standards program. For each site, there will be many constraints that have to be considered. There's roof rights, landlord approvals, structural considerations, cable runs, grounding, lightning protection, power availability, line of sight, and the list goes on and on and on. So, the first operational move is to develop a standard install specification, an enforceable specification that installers can follow with defined acceptance criteria. That's mounting type, weatherproofing, labeling, photos, and how you document the install in your system of record. And you need to decide who owns that. If you buy direct, you may own more of the field coordination. If you use a reseller or managed services provider, you're paying them to make the program repeatable with clear accountability.
All right, so Frank, let's talk about reliability when it comes to the performance of the Starlink service.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one question we get a lot is about weather, snow, ice, heavy rain. The honest answer is it depends. Starlink has features to mitigate snow and ice, but extreme conditions and obstructions can still impact performance, which is why your design assumes degradation at times. The right posture is this is a backup path that must be available enough and predictable enough to carry the traffic we assign to it. And this leads to the trust problem. Enterprises don't trust backup paths they never exercise. You need a failover testing policy, whether it's quarterly or semi-annual, whatever your business can tolerate. And you need automation where possible. The goal is to validate that routing, SD-WAN policies, security controls, and application behavior all work and fail over and fail back. And it's not just testing. Monitoring has to be enterprise grade. You need visibility into the connectivity's health, packet loss, jitter, throughput, and event correlation, so you can tell the difference between a bad day and a real outage.
Let's talk architecture. Frank, what are some of the considerations for the enterprise?
The first decision is traffic assignment. So for some clients, Starlink failover carries everything. For others, it carries only the minimal viable set, payments, voice, core business application, and management traffic. That choice drives cost and user experience. If you try to run full store guest Wi-Fi on a backup path, you'll be unhappy. If you reserve it for critical business functions, you can get reliable outcomes with less complexity. Second is stability. Your SD-WAN needs sensible thresholds to avoid flapping, failover, failback, and the brownout behavior need to be tuned. The best designs are boring. Predictable triggers, predictable policies, and clear operational runbooks. Finally, make sure you understand how the service behaves for inbound and outbound connectivity requirements and align it with your security model, especially if you require specific routing, remote access, or inbound reachability.
All right, let's turn to the operational side. Many enterprises make the mistake of treating this like a consumer service, but at enterprise scale. Brent, what do enterprises need to care for as they enter into agreements for Starlink service?
You want clarity on SLAs, ordering and provisioning, performance expectations, support response, replacement processes, and what happens during congestion or regional events. Also, decide how you'll handle sparing. A realistic enterprise program includes spares staged regionally, documented swap procedures, and a plan of who does the swap, whether that's your store personnel, a local technician, or a dispatch field resource, because waiting days for a replacement dish defeats the purpose of resiliency.
Brent, what goes into making the decision to either purchase direct or use a reseller for the service?
Here's the practical way to decide direct versus reseller. Direct can be attractive on price and simplicity, but you own more of the integration and operations. A reseller or managed service provider is compelling when you need coordinated field services, installation at scale, monitoring, help desk, spares logistics, and consolidated billing. You're buying an operating model, not just connectivity, and the key is accountability. If you use a partner, make sure they're contractually responsible for outcomes, which is your install quality, ticket handling, and MTTR targets, not just best effort.
All right, Frank, let's talk about sourcing Starlink service.
So, whether we're talking about a sole source or some kind of competitive RFX, keep it outcome based and operational. Ask suppliers to describe step by step how sites surveyed, installed, accepted, monitored, tested, and ultimately supported. Enforce comparability. Require a per site 1 and 3 year cost views that will include hardware install, monthly service, monitoring, support, sparing, and any managed services. It all needs to be captured. If suppliers can't present that clearly, you're at risk of unwanted surprises in the future. Also include governance. Who owns the standards? How are changes approved? How do you track inventory? What's the escalation path? That's what separates a pilot from an enterprise program.
Brent, let's shift over to the business case. What does a good business case for Starlink look like?
A constructive way to frame up the comparison is not simply Starlink versus broadband monthly rates. It's really total cost of resiliency per site. That includes equipment and install, plus ongoing ops labor, monitoring, sparing, and the value of avoided outages. If downtime costs you revenue, customer trust, compliance exposure, or operational disruption, resiliency spend can be very rational, but only if you're honest. If you underestimate install cost, forget sparing, or assume it'll just work without testing, the business case can begin to fall apart and the ROI can evaporate. So the maturity model is pilot to validate technical behavior, expand to validate operations, then scale with standards, contracts, and governance that match the enterprise reality.
Thanks, Brent and Frank. This has been a great discussion regarding the potential of Starlink and risks and all. And there are three takeaways I want to list out here to close out the series. First, Starlink can add real path diversity, which is valuable when your current backups may be nothing more than correlated failures. Second, scaling is an operational program. That's standards, monitoring, sparing, and testing are the difference between resiliency and just noise. Third and final, make the business case on total cost and total risk. It's not simply a monthly rate card comparison. If you do these three things, Starlink can be a strong option in your networking toolkit, especially for distributed enterprises that live and die by uptime. And to our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about Starlink and how to approach these technology decisions, or if you'd like to discuss other technology strategy, sourcing, and cost reduction needs with Frank, Brent, or me, or any of our TC2 and LB3 colleagues, please give us a call or shoot us an email. You can also stay up to date by subscribing to Staying Connected, by checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.